Admiral Nyx Valerian stood at the observation deck of Stellar Nexus Station, her silver-scaled skin reflecting the light of distant stars. As the highest-ranking celestial diplomat in this sector, she'd spent centuries perfecting the art of interstellar relations. Her species had mastered faster-than-light travel when humans were still fighting with swords, and she never let anyone forget it. The latest diplomatic crisis should have been routine, a trade dispute between the Etherian merchants and the human colonies. Yet somehow, this newly appointed human security commander had the audacity to question her methods. "With respect, Admiral," Commander James Drake's voice carried across the chamber, interrupting her contemplation, "your approach risks escalating the situation." His tall frame and dark features marked him as distinctly human, though he carried himself with unusual confidence for his species. Nyx turned slowly, her luminescent eyes narrowing. "Commander Drake, I've negotiated more treaties than your entire species has achieved in its brief time among the stars. The Etherians respond to displays of strength. It's how their culture functions." "And yet," Drake stepped forward, data cube in hand, "their trade volume with Earth has doubled in the past year, while their agreements with the celestial worlds have remained static." He projected a holographic chart between them, the numbers hanging in the air like accusatory stars. The other diplomats in the chamber, a mix of various species, turned to watch the exchange. Nyx felt her scales bristle. How dare this temporary being challenge her expertise? "Your species' economic success is based on luck and exploitation of ignorance," she said dismissively. "The Etherians don't understand the long-term implications of dealing with such young races." Drake's expression remained neutral, but his dark eyes hardened. "Perhaps they appreciate our ability to adapt and innovate, qualities that seem to diminish with age in some species." The chamber fell silent. Even the quantum AI managing the station's environmental systems seemed to hold its breath. "You overstep, Commander." Nyx's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. "Remember your place in the galactic order." "My place," Drake smiled, though it didn't reach his eyes. "My place is protecting this station and its inhabitants, all of them. And right now, your diplomatic expertise is pushing us toward a conflict that could have been resolved with simple trade adjustments." Before Nyx could respond, alarms blared throughout the station. Red emergency lights pulsed along the corridors. "Security breach in Docking Bay 7, the station's AI announced. "Etherian vessel attempting unauthorized departure." Drake was already moving. "They're running because they feel cornered," he called over his shoulder. "Sometimes the oldest species have the most to learn about new perspectives." Nyx watched him go, fury and something else, perhaps the first seed of doubt stirring in her ancient heart. She had ruled the stars for centuries, but something was changing. The humans weren't following the expected pattern of emerging species, and James Drake embodied everything that made them dangerous. She touched her communication crystal. "Track that ship. No one challenges my authority in this sector." But even as she gave the order, a voice in her mind whispered. Nyx paced the length of her private chambers, the bioluminescent patterns along her scales pulsing with agitation. The Etherian incident had been resolved, but not in the way she'd intended. Commander Drake's team had caught up with the fleeing vessel, not to apprehend them as she'd ordered, but to negotiate. "They opened a dialogue," she muttered, still unable to believe it. "In the middle of a pursuit." Her meditation crystal chimed, displaying a holographic report. The Etherian merchants had not only returned voluntarily, but had also agreed to new trade terms that benefited all parties. It was infuriating. A knock at her door interrupted her brooding. "Enter," she commanded, already knowing who it would be. Commander Drake stepped inside, his dark uniform pristine despite the chaos of the past few hours. "Admiral, the Etherian representatives request your presence at the signing ceremony." My presence, Nyx's luminescent eyes flashed. You've already undermined my authority. Why maintain the pretense of respect? Drake's expression remained professionally neutral, but she caught a flicker of something in his eyes, not mockery, but something almost like patience. With respect, Admiral, this isn't about authority, it's about progress. The Etherians value their traditional relationships with the Celestials. They want you there. Nyx moved to her viewport, watching the swirling nebula beyond the station. You don't understand our ways, Commander. Centuries of diplomatic protocol. Can evolve, Drake interrupted, then added more softly, just like species do. She turned sharply, ready to reprimand him, but his next words caught her off guard. Did you know that Earth's oceans contain creatures that have remained unchanged for millions of years? He stepped closer to the viewport. Sharks, horseshoe crabs, we call them living fossils. They survived because they were perfectly adapted to their environment. But when that environment changed... Are you comparing my species to primitive Earth creatures? Nyx's voice was dangerous. Drake shook his head. I'm suggesting that even the most successful adaptations need to evolve when the universe changes around them. The Celestials achieved greatness through innovation once. Why stop? Before Nyx could respond, the station's AI interrupted. Admiral Valerian, Commander Drake, priority alert from the Quantum Communications Hub. Multiple reports of failed transmissions across the sector. Drake's posture shifted instantly from diplomatic to alert. Pattern. Analysis suggests systematic disruption. Origin point unknown. Nyx felt a chill along her scales. The quantum network had been stable for millennia. Access the auxiliary channels, she ordered. Blocked, the AI responded. All standard protocols are being rejected. Drake was already moving toward the door. We need to coordinate with other stations in the sector. Admiral, whatever our differences, we need. I am well aware of what we need, Commander. Nyx cut him off, moving to her console. Her fingers flew over the crystalline interface, attempting to access ancient emergency protocols that hadn't been used in centuries. Nothing. For the first time in decades, Nyx felt something she'd thought herself beyond fear. The communications network was the backbone of galactic civilization. Without it... My people have contingencies, she said, more to herself than Drake. Systems so old most species don't even know they exist. And if those fail, Drake's question hung in the air. Nyx met his gaze, seeing not challenge there now, but genuine concern. Then perhaps, she said carefully, it's time to consider some new approaches. Drake nodded once, understanding the concession for what it was. I have some ideas, but you won't like them. I rarely like your ideas, Commander. Nyx moved toward the door. But right now, that's not the point, is it? As they hurried toward the command center, Nyx realized that centuries of ruling the stars hadn't prepared her for this moment. The universe was changing, and for the first time in her long life, she wasn't certain she was ready for what came next. The command center of Stellar Nexus Station hummed with tense activity. Holographic displays showed spreading darkness across the sector map as more communication nodes went dark. Nyx stood at the central console, her silver scales dimmed with concern as she studied the pattern of failures. It's not random, Drake said, pointing to a particular cluster of outages. Look at the progression. Whatever's causing this is moving with purpose, isolating specific regions first. Nyx nodded reluctantly. The oldest communication hubs are being targeted, systems my people established millennia ago. She paused, mind racing through centuries of diplomatic knowledge. Someone knows our infrastructure intimately. An inside job, Drake suggested, earning sharp looks from the celestial technicians nearby. Impossible, Nyx replied automatically, then caught herself. Recent events had taught her to be less certain of impossibilities, but worth investigating. a junior officer burst into the command center, face flushed. "Commander Drake, we've detected unusual energy signatures in the lower maintenance levels. They match the frequency disrupting the quantum network." Drake's eyes met Nyx's. "Your ancient systems might have a more contemporary problem." "My security teams will handle it," Nyx declared, but Drake was already moving. "With respect, Admiral, your teams aren't familiar with the maintenance tunnels. My people mapped them during the last retrofit." He activated his tactical display. "Besides, whoever's down there knows your protocols. They won't expect human unpredictability." Nyx felt her pride warring with pragmatism. "Fine," she conceded, "but I'm coming with you." Drake's eyebrows rose. "Admiral, that's not." "My station, my responsibility," she cut him off. "And contrary to what you might think, Commander, I am capable of adapting." They moved swiftly through the station's lower levels, following energy traces that pulsed eerily through the quantum sensors. The maintenance tunnels were a maze of pipes and conduits, dimly lit by emergency lighting. "These sections were part of the original station," Nyx explained as they descended deeper, "before humans joined the galactic community." Drake checked his weapon, a sleek device that combined human and alien technology. "Must have been quite an adjustment, sharing your creation with newcomers." "You have no idea," Nyx muttered, then froze. Ahead, a shadow moved against the darkness. "There." The figure bolted, surprisingly fast. Drake charged after it, with Nyx close behind. Her enhanced vision caught glimpses of their quarry, tall, humanoid, wearing some kind of stealth suit. They rounded a corner into a vast maintenance chamber. Quantum processors lined the walls, their crystalline structures pulsing with ancient power. The shadowy figure stood at a central console, fingers dancing across its surface. "Stop," Drake commanded, weapon raised. "Step away from the console." The figure turned slowly, and Nyx felt her blood freeze. The intruder wore the ceremonial markings of the Celestial High Command. "Impossible," she breathed. "Admiral Valerian," the figure's voice was smooth, cultured. "You disappoint the Council, collaborating with humans, abandoning protocols that have served us for millennia." "Counselor Vex," Nyx recognized him now. "You're behind the communications blackout. Why?" "To preserve our way of life," Vex replied simply. "Humans spread through the galaxy like a virus, changing everything they touch. Their chaos infects the perfect order we spent millennia building. The Council has decided it's time to remind the galaxy why Celestials ruled the stars." Drake's weapon never wavered. "By destroying the communication network, you'll strand thousands of ships, disable trade routes, cause widespread panic." "A necessary reset," Vex smiled coldly. "From the ashes of this disorder, we'll rebuild, without human interference." Nyx stepped forward, her scales bright with anger. "You're wrong, Counselor. I've seen what humans bring to our society. Yes, they're chaotic, unpredictable, sometimes infuriating." She glanced at Drake. "But they're also innovative, adaptable. They see solutions where we see only problems." "You've gone native, Admiral." Vex's fingers moved across the console again. Warning lights began flashing throughout the chamber. "Fortunately, your opinion no longer matters. The pulse has been initiated. In moments, every quantum communication node in the sector will overload. The age of human influence ends today." Drake fired, but Vex's stealth suit absorbed the blast. The counselor laughed, and then gasped as Nyx tackled him physically, a shocking breach of celestial decorum. They crashed against the console together. "Commander," Nyx shouted, grappling with Vex. "The override sequence." Drake lunged for the console, fingers flying across its alien interface. A little hard to read celestial script under pressure. "The pattern," Nyx grunted, blocking Vex's attempt to reach his weapon. "It's like your Earth oceans, remember? Always changing, yet always the same." Drake's eyes widened with understanding. The console's crystals pulsed as he input a new sequence, not following the rigid celestial protocols, but adapting them, creating something new from something ancient. The warning lights stopped. The chamber fell silent except for the hum of machinery. Quantum network stabilizing, the station's AI announced. Unauthorized program purged. Vex went limp in Nyx's grip. "You've doomed us all," he whispered. "Our perfect order." "Was never perfect," Nyx finished, watching as Drake secured the counselor. "Just comfortable, and comfort breeds stagnation." She straightened her diplomatic robes, dignity returning. "Perhaps it's time for the stars to have new rulers, or better yet, no rulers at all, just allies." Drake smiled slightly as he led Vex away. "Careful, Admiral. You're starting to sound almost human." "Don't push your luck, Commander," Nyx replied. But as they ascended from the maintenance levels, she couldn't help wondering what other changes the future might bring. The stars themselves seemed to shine differently now, full of new possibilities. News of Counselor Vex's arrest spread through the station like a quantum wave, leaving chaos in its wake. The diplomatic quarter buzzed with speculation and fear as species chose sides. Some praised Nyx's actions as progressive. Others whispered that she had betrayed millennia of celestial tradition. In her private chambers, Nyx reviewed the mounting crisis on multiple holographic displays. Reports from across the sector showed the Celestial Council mobilizing, though for what purpose remained unclear. Her own people were divided, centuries-old alliances fracturing under the strain of change. "They're calling an emergency session," Drake announced as he entered, not bothering with formal protocols anymore. "The council wants you to appear and explain your actions." Nyx's scales rippled with dark humor. "Explain? They want to make an example of me, the mighty admiral who chose human chaos over celestial order." "You could deny it," Drake suggested, though his tone made clear he knew she wouldn't. "Claim you were acting under duress. And prove them right about human influence." Nyx turned from the displays, facing him directly. "No, it's time my people learned what I have, that change isn't always decay." A priority alert flashed across the main screen. Drake reached it first, his expression darkening as he read. "Multiple celestial warships just dropped out of quantum space. They're taking up defensive positions around the station." "Defensive?" Nyx moved to verify the readings herself. "No, those formations. They're not defending, they're containing. They mean to isolate us." The station's AI chimed in with urgent updates. Quantum communications being actively blocked. Multiple ships requesting emergency docking clearance. Celestial vessels denying all incoming and outgoing traffic. Drake's tactical training kicked in. "They're cutting us off, making sure whatever happens here stays here." He studied the ship formations. "But they left a gap in their pattern, see? Almost like they expect us to run," Nyx finished. "They want to prove that humans have made me a coward." Her scales flushed with anger. "That choosing progress over tradition means abandoning one's principles entirely." The command center doors slid open as station security officers rushed in with new reports. Trade ships were backing away from the blockade. Diplomatic vessels were demanding safe passage. Fear threatened to spiral into panic. Drake watched Nyx carefully. "What's our play here, Admiral?" She noted his use of "our" rather than "your," a subtle but significant shift. "First, we show them they're wrong about humans making us weak. Open a channel to the lead celestial vessel." The main screen flickered to life, revealing the stern face of Fleet Commander Zar, his silver scales marked with the intricate patterns of high military rank. "Admiral Valerian, surrender the station and remand yourself to celestial custody. This human corruption of our ways ends now." Nyx stood straighter, her own scales glowing with authority. "Corruption, Zar, or catalysis? These humans you fear so much just helped prevent a catastrophe that our own council planned. Their chaos, as you call it, saved the very order you claim to protect. Pretty words, Czar sneered, from a fallen leader. You have 1 hour to comply, or we will take control by force. And the humans you've grown so fond of, their fate will serve as a reminder of why Celestials rule the stars alone. The transmission cut off. Drake turned to Nyx, his face grim. We can evacuate key personnel through that gap they left, most of the human staff. No, Nyx's voice was firm. We don't run, and we don't separate. That's what they want to force us into their false choice between tradition and progress. She moved to the central command console, her fingers dancing across its crystalline surface. Tell me, Commander, how do humans handle being cornered? A slow smile spread across Drake's face. We get creative, and if we're going to break all the rules anyway. Exactly. Nyx's scales pulsed with newfound purpose. They expect celestial protocols or human chaos. Let's show them something entirely new. She turned to address the command center staff, humans, celestials, and a dozen other species, all watching with a mixture of fear and hope. Contact every ship in range, she ordered. Tell them Stellar Nexus Station offers sanctuary to any vessel willing to help defend the future. And Commander, those unconventional tactics you're always talking about, I think it's time I learned some new tricks. As the command center erupted into activity, Nyx caught Drake's approving nod. The next hour would determine not just their fate, but potentially the course of galactic civilization. The stars had watched over countless conflicts, but this one was different. This time, the choice wasn't between order and chaos, but between stagnation and growth. And Nyx Valerian, who had once ruled the stars with unwavering certainty, found herself embracing uncertainty with newfound strength. The next hour passed in a blur of preparation. Ships from a dozen species had answered Nyx's call, forming a ragtag defense line around Stellar Nexus Station. Against the gleaming perfection of the celestial battle fleet, they looked like a collection of space debris. But Nyx saw something else in their formation: adaptability, innovation, and most importantly, unity. Celestial fleet is moving, Drake announced from his tactical station. They're charging weapons. Nyx stood at the center of the command hub, her silver scales reflecting the red alert lights. All ships, execute pattern Omega. Remember, timing is everything. The assembled civilian vessels scattered in seemingly random directions, a chaos that would have offended celestial military doctrine. Fleet Commander Czar's voice boomed through the command center. This pitiful display changes nothing, Valerian. Surrender now, or watch your precious multi-species experiment burn. Nyx smiled, an expression she'd learned from humans. You still don't understand, do you, Czar? Look around you. Every ship out there represents a species that chose to stand with us. Not because they were ordered to, but because they believe in something greater than ancient protocols. Incoming fire, Drake shouted. The celestial ships launched their first volley streams of quantum-enhanced energy that could slice through standard shields like paper. But the defending ships didn't try to block them. Instead, they executed a series of precise maneuvers that seemed random, but followed a complex pattern Drake had calculated, a blend of human unpredictability and celestial precision. Every shot missed. Now, Nyx commanded, show them what real evolution looks like. The civilian ships suddenly reversed course, their engines flaring in perfect synchronization. From their seemingly chaotic positions, they created a web of overlapping energy fields, a defensive technique that shouldn't have been possible with such disparate technology. What is this? Czar demanded, his voice betraying the first hint of uncertainty. The future, Nyx replied. Commander Drake discovered that different species' shield technologies, when properly synchronized, create something entirely new. something neither humans nor Celestials could achieve alone. The defending ships began to move as one, their combined shield network pulsing with rainbow energy. Each vessel contributed its unique characteristics to the whole, creating a defense that adapted and evolved with every celestial attack. But Zar wasn't finished. Enough games, all ships full assault pattern, show them why Celestials have ruled for millennia. The space around the station erupted in a devastating display of firepower. Quantum beams and plasma torpedoes filled the void, enough destructive force to reduce a small moon to atoms. "Hold together," Drake called to their allied ships. "The pattern will work." Nyx watched as their defensive web flexed and shifted, each species' technology compensating for the other's weaknesses. Human ingenuity merged with Etherian energy manipulation. Proximum phase technology complemented Relian quantum fields. It was beautiful, chaotic, and perfectly ordered all at once. The celestial barrage continued for 5 full minutes. When it finally ceased, Stellar Nexus Station and its defenders remained unscathed. "Impossible," Zar whispered. "No," Nyx corrected him. "Inevitable. The galaxy is changing, Zar. We can either change with it or become living fossils, preserved in our perfection but ultimately irrelevant." A new voice cut through the command channel, ancient, powerful, and very, very angry. "What is the meaning of this?" Nyx's scales paled. "High Chancellor." The supreme leader of the Celestial Council had arrived, their massive flagship dropping out of quantum space like a silver star. But before they could speak again, something extraordinary happened. One by one, the civilian ships began broadcasting their own messages. Captains and crews of a dozen species, each telling their own stories of cooperation with humans, of discoveries made and boundaries broken. The High Chancellor listened in silence as the evidence of change mounted. Finally, they spoke again. "Admiral Valerian, I begin to understand why you have chosen this path. Commander Drake, your species continues to surprise us." A pause heavy with significance. Perhaps it is time for the Celestial Council to surprise the galaxy in return." Nyx felt Drake's hand on her shoulder, a gesture that would have appalled her just days ago. Now it felt like an anchor in a storm of change. "The stars are changing," she said softly. "It's time we changed with them." As the High Chancellor ordered the Celestial Fleet to stand down, Nyx looked around the command center. Humans worked alongside Celestials, their differences creating strength rather than division. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't orderly, but it was alive with possibility. And for the first time in centuries, Nyx Valerian felt truly excited about the future.